Hello YouTube, Dave here again. In my most recent pickups or new game stuff video, whatever you want to call that particular series, I had shown off a brand new Pathfinder 2nd Edition Adventure Path compilation book. And in that video, I mentioned that I do have others of those, and I might do a video kind of showing off the other compilation books that I have in my collection, and I thought I would do that now. So, for the purposes of this video, a compilation, an adventure path or adventure compilation or campaign compilation book, whatever you want to call it, whatever I decide to call it by the time I come up with the title for this video, is a series of, it's a reprinted series of books or modules or adventure path installments that are being combined into a singular book. So these would have been things that released as separate modules, as separate installments in magazines, or as their own paths. So for example, when I showed the Gatewalkers book, which will make an appearance later in the video, it was a compilation of the three-part adventure path from Paizo. So I've got the originals here, and there's the updated compilation book. So this has to be something that is putting together these scenarios, these adventures, these modules, whatever you want to call them, for the purposes of creating a cohesive story or campaign experience. So there are other compilation books that I have, or anthology collections, whatever you want to refer to those as. Things like Tales from the Yawning Portal or Quest for the Infinite Staircase are examples of compilations that do reprint previously released adventures or modules, but they're not really tied together with any sort of cohesive narrative. They're just simply there. You know, with the Tales from the Yawning Portal, the closest thing that really binds them together, with the exception of the first two, because they were actually directly related adventures, is the fact that you just hear rumors of them when you're in the tavern type of thing. So it's not really like it's a dedicated campaign, it's just a collection of modules put together. And that's nothing wrong with that either. Those definitely serve a purpose as well. But we're going to take a look at the actual adventures. And I always have a soft spot for adventure paths, like these pre-written campaigns. Mostly because my first really successful D&D campaigns, the ones where I got to run it all the way from its beginning to its intended conclusion, were actually adventure path installments, the Shackled City and Age of Worms paths. And a lot of that has more to do, truthfully, with the fact that I changed my gaming groups when I started running the adventure paths from the Dungeon magazine to a much more functional group, we'll say. But it's still the fact that, those were my two most successful campaigns at that point, and I genuinely had a great time with them, and I like to run a lot of published adventures. I am doing some homebrew stuff as well, but I'm running several different games, and I just do not have the mental energy to do actual, homebrewed scenarios for every single group that I'm running. Right now, I've got 5 different games, I think, on the go. Might be 4. There's a D&D 3.5 game. There's a 5e game. There's Blade Runner. I guess it's 4. So Blade Runner RPG and Starfinder 2nd edition. So I've got a lot of different things going on. I just can't dedicate that kind of mental energy. So yeah, I've always had a soft spot for these adventure compilations, turning them into a campaign. So we're going to go through the ones that I have in my collection here. We're going to start with D&D, and they're going to be in edition order, not necessarily the order of their actual release, although it is fairly close. The first one that I have here is perhaps the most unique of the things that I have that are part of this concept, because what I have here is B1 through 9 in search of adventure. So this is a campaign for characters levels 1 through 3, and it takes elements of the first 9 B series modules to kind of put them together and create an actual story, an actual campaign. So see if I can find the flow chart here. Yeah. So, for example, you don't just go through 9 different scenarios and still wind up 3rd level by the end of it. You actually have a starting point, and then different things can lead you into different directions. And this is not a dedicated, full-on reprint. Like I said, it's probably the one that stretches the definition of the campaign compilation, as much as it possibly can, because this is more of sort of the greatest hits of the B1 through 9 that it sort of puts together into the storyline. For example, for B1, you get the map, and that's pretty well it. And you're kind of sort of forced to populate it yourself if the characters wish to go through there. You do get things like the Caves of Chaos. You do get things like the Lost City. You get aspects of those adventures, of those modules, but it's not quite the full thing. However, it does take those modules, which, modules are meant to be standalone. They're meant to be modular, so you can just drop them into your game as need be. And it did attempt to put them together into an actual campaign. How successful they were depends on who you talk to. I think it's a cool idea. I think it's a cool concept. I know there's others that really don't like this product, but I think it's a neat idea, and it introduces me to elements of those modules that I don't have in the B series. So I think it's pretty cool, and this was probably the earliest example, I would say, of taking published modules and putting them together to create an actual cohesive campaign. So Search of Adventure, that would be the first one in this video on the D&D side of things. Up next, this is a more recent released product, but it is for first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and that is the Against the Slave Lords book. So they did also do a reprint of Dungeons of Dread, which was S1 through S4, and that is another adventure compilation book or module compilation book, but they're not actually woven together to create a campaign, whereas the Slave Lord series was very much meant to be an ongoing storyline that you played from beginning to end. What's also cool about this one is it does reprint, A1 through A4, but it also introduces a new chapter to start the campaign off with A0, which is Danger at Dark Shelf Quarry. And I wish I would have had a chance to run this, because I was planning on doing a first edition AD&D game years ago when I did run some first edition AD&D. But the size of the group that was recommended for this was like twice the size of the group that I actually had at my monthly gaming table. So I decided to do a homebrewed scenario first to get them to second level. Because I think you're supposed to start at first level, but you have to have like 7 or 8 characters in the party or something like that. And we could have done hirelings and henchmen and stuff like that, but I didn't really want to. I wanted to just let the players be like the main focus. So my goal was to get them up to level 2 and then kind of go from there. But yeah, this, like I said, just puts together the whole Slave Lord series and introduces a new chapter there. So this is really cool. I believe this is also available print on demand through DM's Guild. This In Search of Adventure was available print on demand. This is actually where I got my copy of it from DM's Guild, but I think it's been pulled because I don't see it on the listings anymore, but I'm pretty sure that the Slave Lords one is still available. So this one, if you're interested, should still be able to be found on DM's Guild or Drive-Thru-RPG. Speaking of Drive-Thru-RPG and DM's Guild, this is where I got my next entry in this video. This is Against the Giants, The Liberation of Jeff. And that's not like a person, that's a region. It's the Grand Duchy of Jeff. I give myself like grief because I can't come up with fantasy names for like cities or kingdoms or things like that. And maybe I'm just trying too hard, I guess. But anyway, the land of Jeff was overrun by a horde of giants. This actually does put together G1 through G3. So you've got the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, you've got the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and you have the Hall of the Fire Giant King. So they put all 3 of those original first edition AD&D modules together, and they basically updated it a little bit. They added some new stuff in there, but this is now one book for your campaign. And I think there was an earlier compilation as well for first edition that did have G1 through G3, but I don't own that. I do have this 25th anniversary version though, and I think this is actually still is this for second edition AD&D? I know it's like it came out during second edition, but I'm wondering if this is kind of like a reprint there. But I'm pretty sure it's for second edition, the version of the game, which is not so drastically different that you couldn't run it with first edition or second edition rules. But there you go. So the Against the Giants, which would lead to the Drow series, which also had a compilation book, which I don't own, and I really wish I had that one. That had like the D1 through D3, which I have some of those modules. And then they had the Queen of the Demon Web Pits, which I have the standalone module, but I don't have the compilation book. So, regardless, though, if you want, again, a campaign to play, this is one that is available, and it is based off of putting together pre-existing modules. And up next, we've got the one that started it all for me. This is the Shackled City Adventure Path compilation book. So this was put out by Paizo, and this was put out, I think, a year or so after the release of the actual, or the final installment of the Adventure Path. It might have been less than that. It might have been about 6 months or so. I forget exactly when it came out. But this was the first campaign I ever ran from start to finish. This book got an awful lot of use, so it did combine the 11 modules or 11 Adventure Path installments from a Dungeon magazine, but it also included a new installment that took place between the first and second installments in the magazine, because there was a weird level gap where you ended the first scenario at level 3, but you start the second scenario. So Life's Bizarre, you reach 3rd level by the end of it, and then you started the second scenario, which is called Flood Season, and you started that at level 4. So there was nothing that really had you go from level 3 to level 4. And I don't know if it was ever addressed in the magazine, so they introduced this module here, Draklar's Way, to fill in that story gap. And it did sort of give you an idea that there was more stuff going on, because you would come across this mercenary camp that was outside of the city of Cauldron, and the mercenaries were coming in through these tunnels to sort of escape or bypass having to pay the gate tax to enter the city properly. And they would play a role later on in the campaign as sort of part of destabilizing the Cauldron's government and law enforcement. So yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic book, and does some other really great things here as well. So it does actually have some updates and modifications to the original adventures. It also included, because some of the adventures had online upgrades that you could put into them as well. So the Life's Bizarre had like different traps you could use if you had the online supplement. And so that's actually just included into the book itself. But we also have the characters, the NPCs, the reoccurring NPCs, all done out by level from the beginning of the campaign all the way until the final moments. And they never reach level 20. That's something that only the player characters get to do in this campaign. So this was an absolutely awesome compilation. And like I said, my first campaign that I ever actually got to finish, because the group didn't fall apart to bickering and infighting, was this one here. I really wish that we could have had Paizo continuing with Dungeon Magazine a bit longer, or that they would have been able to release the next installment as a hardcover, because I know there were plans to do that, which was the Age of Worms Adventure Path, which I did videos for each of those installments. I got to get back into the worm food videos as well here in the very near future. But I know that they were planning on releasing the Age of Worms as a single volume compilation as well, and likely would have incorporated the worm food stuff right into the adventures as they were sort of following along with them. We just never got that, because by the time Age of Worms was wrapping up, I think that's when Paizo was informed that the magazine would cease physical production, and then Wizards would be reclaiming it and releasing it as an online subscription service, which kind of sucked, because I loved Dungeon Magazine. It was one of my favorite things that I look forward to. A lot of times I look more forward to Dungeon Magazine than even the D&D books that were coming out in the same month. So it's a shame we never got Age of Worms, but there was Shackled City, and again, this is a really great campaign as well. The original adventures in the magazines had to be, because it was an experimental thing at the time, they were very unrelated on the surface to one another, and they do make more of an effort in the hardcover to sort of set up for the final reveals and stuff like that, because like the final villain of the Adventure Path doesn't really get revealed or made clear until the final installment of the adventure path. Like, you do go into Occipitous, you do go into Adamarcus's level of the Abyss, but he's not there. He's, gone or whatever, and it's about finding somebody to fill that spot. But that's it. Like, it doesn't really set him up as the final villain. So they do a better job of that, although it still leaves a little to be desired. But this is still a great book. So Shackled City, the first compilation book that I owned, and I absolutely adore it. And then finally, we're going to jump to 5th edition D&D, and we're going to take a look at Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So again, we've had other things like we had the Tales from the Yawning Portal. I don't know why I blanked on that for a second. There was Tales from the Yawning Portal. There was Quest from the Infinite Staircase. There was Candlekeep Mysteries. There was Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. So there was a lot of adventure anthology books that have come out. Keys to the Golden Vault. The Journey to the Radiant Citadel, I think it's called. There's all kinds of like really good compilations that some of them are unique and new adventures. Others were reprints of classic modules, but they were always kind of, the reprints were kind of like just standalone, or again, a lot of them were kind of based on dungeon crawls. So that, as a campaign, that can kind of wear thin after a while. And so with those, they're really just meant to be something that you could take a single chapter and drop it into your campaign as needed. It's not necessarily meant for you to go from the very first dungeon and crawl all the way through the final one. And even if you do, there's not really a story that connects them. Ghosts of Saltmarsh is a little bit different, though, because it combines I think it was the U series modules. So there's like Sinister Secrets of Ghosts of Saltmarsh. What do we got here? Yeah, the Sinister Secrets, Danger at Dunwater, and The Final Enemy. So those were I think they were the U modules. So U1, U2, and U3. And they've also taken, this is actually kind of neat with this book, because they actually took some Dungeon Magazine adventures and they've dropped them into these campaigns as well. So like the Isle of the Abbey, I forget which edition that was when that came out. That might have been 1st edition AD&D. I don't know if it actually says when the original one released, but then you have things like let's see if we can find it here, Tamarot's Fate. You have the Styes. Like, these were all from Dungeon Magazine. So it's kind of cool to see like those being involved there, but they all fit together really well, and they all go together to tell a story. So Ghosts of Saltmarsh is a great reprint module compilation book that uses it to create an actual like dedicated campaign. So really cool stuff there. All right, so we've looked at some D&D ones, but they're not the only company that I have books for that are these compilations. So let's take a look at Pathfinder, or Paizo in particular, because we do have a Starfinder book here as well. So we're going to start with their 1st edition and their first ever adventure path for the Pathfinder brand, which was Rise of the Rune Lords. So this is the pocket edition version of it. This is based off of the 5th anniversary reprint in hardcover form of those original Rise of the Rune Lords modules or Adventure Path installments that came out, because, and this is something that I've had to explain, or I've come up against more than once. The Pathfinder brand existed for a year before the Pathfinder role-playing game came out. Actually, probably even over a year. It existed before it became like the Pathfinder RPG. So when Dungeon Magazine was being pulled from Paizo, they were in the process of releasing like game mastery products, which did include some modules. We're going to see a bit of that here in a moment as well. But they also had Adventure Path installments that if you wanted to keep your subscription, your dungeon subscription, they could carry it over into these Adventure Path installments. And the first one was Rise of the Rune Lords. The original release of this was actually fully for 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons, with the 5-year anniversary book, the hardcover compilation, updating it for the Pathfinder 1st edition role-playing game. And then this is the pocket edition release of that version. So yeah, I think this coincided with the 10th anniversary, the release of the Pocket Edition. But again, these are really, really cool. It's interesting to see, like, because this would have been in development, right? And I wonder if this was ever sort of designed or planned or pre-planned to be, again, just a 3.5 D&D adventure for Dungeon Magazine, or if this was something that they fully rethought and retooled, knowing that they were losing the magazine. But regardless, it's still a really cool level 1 through 20 campaign, and one of these days I do want to run it for Pathfinder First Edition. So really, really cool to have that. You do see the 3.5 OGL thing on the bottom there, but that wasn't the only campaign or adventure path that got released for strictly 3.5, because Pathfinder First Edition didn't exist yet. Their second adventure path followed the same suit, and this was Curse of the Crimson Throne. So this was the second installment in the second adventure path ever for Pathfinder First Edition. I don't think they actually show the individual books here, though, like they did in the other one there. But it was the same kind of story. First edition Pathfinder didn't exist yet. They released the 6-part adventure path, levels 1 through 20, and then they did an updated version, a hardcover re-release some years later to convert it to Pathfinder First Edition, and then, shortly after the Rise of the Runelords book came out, they released this, The Curse of the Crimson Throne, as this was, I think, the last pocket edition that ever came out for Pathfinder First Edition. So, really cool to see that. And, again, I don't know as much about this one. I've been looking through the Rise of the Runelords a little bit there. I do want to run both of these at some point. I think this one has a little bit more like political intrigue involved with it, though. But that's fine. I do like sort of the change up in the adventure styles there. But we do have for Pathfinder First Edition, we've got their first 2 adventure paths ever were combined into single tomes. They didn't do that for all of them. They did do that for those first 2, though. Now, looking at Pathfinder Second Edition, we've got, just a second here, for Pathfinder Second Edition, we have the Crown of the Kobold King. So the Crown of the Kobold King was actually a compilation of some of those game mastery modules, including the very first one that they ever released. I don't remember if it actually tells you what the numbers were, like the letter and number codes were for the originals. Yeah, I don't think they have that, but there was like a trilogy of modules that they released for the Game Mastery line, which was separate from the Pathfinder, and I think it's even older than the Pathfinder line. And they were meant to be connected, but they were loosely connected, and they weren't released like one after the other. But they did re-release it as a compilation book here for the Crown of the Kobold King hardcover for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And what they did is they combined all the levels of like the Droskar's Crucible or the adventure locations from those original Game Mastery modules, and they put them all together in one location. And this was an absolute blast to run as well. I did run this. I did actually finish this with my current group, and we did transition from Pathfinder to Starfinder. So my original plans for the Pathfinder campaign kind of fell by the wayside when the Starfinder 2nd Edition playtest book came out. But again, really cool compilation of the of some of those early Paizo Game Mastery modules. So put together to create an actual campaign. So Crown of the Kobold King, absolutely fantastic book. And then for continuing on, we've got for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, we've got the Abomination Vault. So this was one of the earlier adventure paths for Pathfinder 2e as well. And this one I think was pretty well received and pretty popular. I can't remember if it was, I think it was the third or fourth adventure path for Pathfinder 2e. And this one's actually really cool. It was also released as a 5e campaign as well, though I don't have the 5e version of it. But essentially, it involves a menagerie of just bizarre creatures that were being kept below, this settlement that I think basically ended up getting destroyed. And the plan is to sort of like unleash these creatures, and the player characters have to find out where these bizarre things are coming from. And it's sort of a traditional dungeon crawl. I know I'm not really doing it justice. It's been a few years since I looked at this, but this was actually something I was going to be running as well at one point, but I never did get to it because, again, the Starfinder stuff came out, and I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit more. But again, this was just a straight compilation of the 3-part, I think it was 3-part adventure path for Pathfinder 2e, and yeah, it was a big dungeon crawl, which is again sort of set aside from the other 2 adventure paths. Which the first one was the Age of Ashes, which was meant to be like your introduction to the world of Galarian. So you had these elven gates that, like, each scenario would give you the key to the gate that would be featured in the next scenario. And essentially you would travel like to all these different locations to kind of get the feel for the world of Galarian. So you go to all these different areas. The second adventure path, oh crap, I forget the name of it now. But I could probably turn around and just see it because it's on my shelf. But you were actually taking on the role of circus performers, and there's other stuff going on as well. So you're like circus performers / adventurers, and you have to perform shows on top of some of the like area events that are going on. That could be really bad for the region if they're not dealt with. It's sort of like interesting concepts, but yeah, this was like just a big old dungeon crawl. And the first one for Pathfinder 2e, so they put it together as a compilation. I probably should have looked more at this before I started the video. This is more about just which ones are out there rather than going through a summary of what they are, type of thing. But yeah, Abomination Vaults, I definitely want to run this at some point. And speaking of things I want to run, I already showed the individual modules, but here is the Gatewalkers compilation book. So this was done so that it could be remastered for the second edition, the new version of Pathfinder 2e. And again, I actually thought that this was a much more recent campaign than it really was. But if we take a look at these originals here, I think what are we looking at for the date on these? I think they're like 20. Oh, doesn't say on the front. Does it say on the back? Okay, I guess not, but it's still in the 180s, 187, 188, 189, and we're well into the 200s now. So it's actually older than I thought it would have been to have these released initially. But yeah, it's kind of cool to have these all together once again. So these are the originals. And I actually don't have, well, I do have the originals for for the next one I'm going to show here as well, but I don't for the Abomination Vaults. I had the first 2 books out of the 3, I think it was. But when I got the hardcover, I just traded in the 2 individual installments since I had no use for them when I was just going to use the hardcover. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. I love these compilation books. And again, it's just nice to have everything all together. And a lot of times with these compilations, they also have a chance to incorporate errata. They get to incorporate some updates, again, to like the rule set or some other things to sort of, clarify situations that may have come up in the original printing. So we've got the Gatewalker path. And then finally for Starfinder 1st edition, we've got the Dead Suns Adventure Path. So this was the very first adventure path to come out for Starfinder 1st edition. And I did run the first 2 installments of this for my in-person group, but that's around the time that COVID ended up happening. So we shut down in-person games at the time, and we never did get back into the Starfinder one. The Starfinder was already a smaller group to begin with. But yeah, this is the original campaign, and what's interesting about the Dead Suns campaign is that at least the first installment, if not the first 2 installments, actually released before the Alien Archive book came out. So there was something released as part of, I think it was Free RPG Day, and it was called Starfinder First Contact, and that had some creatures in there that were basically referenced in the original printing of the first, and I think the second, but I know the first installment for sure came out before the Alien Archive book. So you had references to the First Contact product, which I didn't have. And when I went to run it for with having the Alien Archive, because it was obviously out by then, I had to kind of go through, and I think in my scribbler, I ended up like writing down the page numbers to find the creatures in the Alien Archive book, because I didn't have the First Contact thing. So it was a bit messy in the beginning, but I think this is a really cool concept for a campaign. Basically, early on, a fragment of what could be like a doomsday weapon is recovered, and you are trying to be the ones to get it. You've also have the corpse fleet, which is trying to find it and assemble it and use it as well. And again, where this was the first adventure path for Starfinder, kind of like the Age of Ashes for Pathfinder 2e, you do a lot of going from one location to another. Like, for example, the first installment took place on Absalom Station, as well as the fragment of this Doomsday mega weapon that the characters will go to explore and kind of find a little bit of information on it. The next adventure has them going through some ruins on the world of Castrovel. And they go to there's other locations that they visit as well. Those are the two that I remember, because those are the two that I ended up running. But it's kind of, again, meant to introduce you to the Pact World system. So each scenario had you going to a different location, at least for the first 3 or 4, and then the 5th and 6th were all about sort of setting up for the end game. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. Again, I love these compilation books there. So let me know in the comments below. Do you have any of these compilation campaign books that reprint older adventures or adventure path installments or modules and puts them together to form a campaign, if maybe they were only loosely connected originally, or if they were always intended to be a campaign, but they were spread out over multiple different things, and now they're all together under one set of covers. So let me know what your favorite ones of those are. Let me know which ones you have in your collection. Let me know which ones that you have that I don't. Like I said, there was the Queen of Spiders, I think, was the compilation book that had the D series, D1 through 3, and then the Queen of the Demon Web Pits. And I'm sure there's others out there as well. I know there's some Dragonlance ones too, I think, which, come to think of it, I think I actually have a couple of those, so I might have to do an update to this. But anyway, let me know that in the comments below. Anyway, thank you all so very much for your time. I appreciate it. Just wanted to do sort of a quick little video. We're still in the middle of a heat wave here, so even though I'm in the basement, it still gets pretty hot. So I'm going to go upstairs and stand in front of the air conditioner while rehydrating. I appreciate all your time. It really means a lot to me when anyone takes time out of their day to watch any of these videos. And I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.